The truth behind the Raptors this year.
You have no idea what you're doing, dog.
I'm crushing you.
Whether you want to blame it on the pandemic, injuries, bad bounces, disagreements, or just poor luck, there's no question that the 2021 Toronto Raptors have struggled to say the least. With Kawhi and Ibaka teaming up in La La Land, Danny Green continuing his journey across the NBA, and the remaining pieces left over from the team's championship run on the move, it feels like the 2019 NBA Champion Toronto Raptors have almost completely fallen off the beaten path. After what was one of the most magical seasons in recent memory in 2019, this team has fallen off mightily since the pandemic hit, struggling to simply keep their head above water. With Raptors mainstay Norman Powell on the move to Portland and young talents like Matt Thomas and Terrence Davis finding homes elsewhere, the 2021 season for the Toronto Raptors has been filled with a multitude of disappointments and tremendous uncertainty. So with that being said, it's time to break down how it is that the 2019 NBA Champion Toronto Raptors have fallen off so mightily, with the three main reasons being their lack of size, number of injuries, and the play, or lack thereof, of Spicy P. Lack of size. Losing Gasol and Ibaka was always going to be tough, but to try and replace them with the inconsistent Chris Boucher and an even less consistent Aaron Baines seems foolhardy. This team really lacks the depth they once had all over the floor, but it becomes most evident when it comes to size and the ability of their front court specifically. They remain as one of the only teams in the league with no true center, as both Baines and Boucher are under 6'10", and neither average more than 6 rebounds a game. This team struggles to rebound the ball on both ends, but specifically it's the defensive rebounding issue that's plagued Toronto all season. The Raptors ranked 29th in the league in defensive rebounding percentage, leaving opposing teams to grab 27.5% of their offensive misses against Toronto. Giving up this amount of offensive rebounds is a recipe for disaster, as not only are you giving the other team more opportunities, but you're also tiring out your own team in the process, forcing the Raptors to continue defending possessions over and over and over again. While rebounding's not the be-all and end-all for any winning franchise, it's absolutely an integral part for winning basketball games, especially defensive rebounding, as you're simply just giving the other team more chances to score because you're too small, slow, or lazy to get into position. This has without a doubt been a massive factor in the Raptors' constant struggles, and they'd benefit greatly from making this an area of focus moving into the 2021 NBA offseason. Injuries. Losing one star due to the health and safety protocols would have been tough enough, but Toronto lost 5 players, including 3 of their 6 top scorers. Of their 44 games this season, only 14 have been with Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby and Norman Powell healthy at tip-off. Nick Nurse has been forced to constantly shuffle the rotation in order to find a solid bench player, not named Chris Boucher, to try and implement into the rotation. So much so that it's forced Nurse to run out 16 different starting lineups this year, none of which have impacted the team's ability to win games. Unfortunately, with the majority of their bench being either first or second-year players or unproven talent, they've yet to find any consistent players to make up for the losses they've struggled with all year. With the amount of injuries this team has been forced to deal with, it becomes nearly impossible to gain any level of consistency as the lineups change seemingly every week. Although, even with the number of changes in the lineup, moving in transition and taking advantage of possessions have been major issues for all of Nick Nurse's lineups. When the Raptors have been at their best, they've been one of the NBA's best transition teams on both ends of the court. Last season, they ranked 4th in the league in transition defense. Meanwhile, this year, Toronto's transition defense hasn't been bad, it's been horrific. The Raptors rank dead last in the NBA in transition defense. Some of that drop-off might just be an effort thing and not hustling back in transition, but most of it's due to miscommunications and people picking up the wrong assignments in transition. Nurse even came out and said recently how he believes the issues the team faces really just revolve around getting back in transition and the end of possessions, as in defensive rebounding. In the middle, he said things aren't too bad. The team actually defends pretty well in the half court, and the Raptors can hold their own when they're set on first chance opportunities. They rank 7th in the league in half court defense this season, allowing just 94.6 points per 100 half court possession. Due in large part to the number of injuries the Raptors have sustained this year, Nick Nurse has been forced to go deep into his rotation all year, giving players like Stanley Johnson, DeAndre Bembry and Paul Watson far more opportunity than anyone could have imagined. And while they made some solid additions at the trade deadline by bringing in fellow Duke alums in a red-hot Gary Trent Jr. and a talented, when healthy, Rodney Hood, we can still say with full certainty that this team would have likely struggled less had they not been forced into so many different rotations due to injuries.
Takes a step in.
He loves the moment. Pascal Siakam spinning, getting the
Spicy P. Pascal Siakam, much like Fred VanVleet, captured the hearts of Raptors fans across the globe with his inspiring playoff performances and an outpour of heart-throbbing moments for the city. Although while VanVleet has evolved and transitioned over as the leader for this young Raptors squad, Siakam has looked like a shadow of his former self, dropping from 22.9 points per game in 2020 to 20 points per game in 2021, shooting 44.8% from the field and 30.4% from deep, as opposed to 45% and 36% in 2020. His overall efficiency has dropped off, now carrying a plus-minus of plus 2.6 after carrying a plus 6.6 and plus 7.4 plus-minus rating the previous 2 seasons. While this drop-off isn't overly devastating, it's in regard to the expectations we all had for Spicy C coming into this season, which is maybe our own fault. This notable decline in success has coincided with feuds with coaches, including the Pascal Nurse shouting match, questionable decision-making on the floor, and inconsistent performances. To say that both the play and the temperament of Siakam has been erratic would be a severe understatement. The reasons for his all-over-the-place outcomes, ineffective performances, a couple of weird benchings, and apparent outright anger are understandable given the circumstances. But the results also speak for themselves. Prior to the team's recent win over the Nuggets, the Raptors were on a 9-game losing streak and in a bad place, with one of the major reasons being Siakam's inability to maintain any sort of consistency. He's a total unicorn of a player as a stretch 4 that can play literally anywhere on the floor with impressive ball handling, unique agility, and ability to push the pace and get in the passing lanes. However, he struggles in the half-court at times and has been inconsistent finding his shot. He seems to get stuck in the in-between as he is much faster and more skilled than other forwards, but he's significantly smaller and leaner than nearly every big man in the league. Since Pascal Siakam has taken over as the best player on the team, they have hovered around .500 and were bounced out in the second round of the playoffs not even a year ago. Ever since Kawhi handed the keys to the franchise over to Pascal, he's failed to live up to the hype, proving that he may be no better than a second or third option on a winning franchise. When Toronto first paid Spicy P his 4-year, $130 million contract, it was right after he helped a franchise with no history of championship success bring home its first Larry O.B. And while he's surely played a pivotal role in the team's success, he's no longer playing at that level. And the issue is that he thinks he is. Pascal carries the confidence of a perennial all-star, and yet he's only been in the conversation for 2 to 3 seasons now. That's not to say he doesn't deserve praise for his continuous improvement and rise up from his humble G-League beginnings as a late-round draft pick, but he still needs to realise that he's yet to live up to his massive contract, and he still has a lot to prove on both ends of the floor if he wants people to take him seriously. For Pascal to take the next leap, he either needs to commit to bulking up so he can bang in with the big boys down low, or add more to his offensive arsenal so as to not limit his offensive output as a wing player. While Toronto's failed season shouldn't be entirely blamed on Siakam, his inability to live up to being the #1 on a winning team has left him in a spot where he and the team exudes constant frustration. I still think it's a little premature to think about getting rid of Spicy P, as he's still only 26 years old and has significant championship success, which of course is invaluable. But if I'm Toronto, I'm not completely against shipping him elsewhere either, given the right price. And if you're Pascal and you want to be considered a leader on this team, then stop getting into fights with coaches, stop complaining about minutes, and stop missing easy shots late in the game. Still, remember he's only 26 years old and provides the length, athleticism and championship pedigree that make you believe he can still lead a winning franchise. He's getting paid like a player that can lead a team to the finals. Now it's time to show everyone that you can live up to the bill. Conclusion. Even though the 2020-21 season has certainly been a down year for the Raptors, they were able to retain Lowry for at least the rest of the season and have some solid young pieces to build around. VanVleet is slowly emerging as the team's all-star leader. Meanwhile, OG Anunoby is finally blooming offensively, averaging a career-high 15 points per game. And despite the fact that they've lost 9 of 10 and are currently not in the postseason, they are 14th in the NBA in net rating, ahead of playoff contenders like the Hornets, Knicks and Pacers, all of whom Toronto has beaten this season. It's unclear what the remainder of the 2021 season has in store for the Raptors, but they certainly have a lot to consider moving forward.
Third, they had their opportunity, and the Raptors now